Hey everyone, today for another vlog, and today I want to talk about the culture of complaining. So I think it's a very straightforward title. You might already know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those people who just complain all the fucking time. If you know, you know. So there are people who seem to complain about literally everything, whether it is something big, such as modern jobs, as I've talked in the previous vlog. That's the main topic of complaint, or relationships, marriage, money, government changes, talking about pretty big things. So I think that makes sense why people would talk about those. Also talking about the smallest minutia. Like today I was literally with my parents and my brother at a restaurant, and my brother literally brought up the fact that like the forks were cheap, and like they were too light, and it showed that they were too cheap, and like my father agreed, like, yeah, this showed that they're too cheap. He's like, why the fuck are people talking about this? I don't know if it was like a full-on complaint, but like the fact that they point this out to me just shows how utterly, I don't know, it's crazy to me that people spend their finite time and finite time, yeah, energy talking about that shit. Meanwhile, you go to a job you hate and all that. Like, it feels like there are way more important things to care about in life, than fucking fork in a restaurant that is too cheap. Like, Jesus Christ. I don't know. So, it seems like to be the two main forms of complaint. There's like big picture complaints, which, depending on the people you're with, people do or do not. Like they complain about the system or like whatever, or they complain about the smallest irrelevant shit. Like I would call super myopic complaining. I think the second is far worse. Honestly, like it's just so petty and such a huge distraction of one's time. And like the once you can identify people as being complainers, what you realize that they just complain all the time. They never appreciate anything. They never speak out to show any appreciation. Like, oh, isn't it a beautiful day today? Like, I'm really glad I woke up and I went outside to appreciate the day. Like, they would never say that. There are people who would never say that. I'd say my family are chronic complainers. Like, it's like they're addicted to complaining. Honestly, like maybe addicted is not the right word, but like it's like the game they love playing. And it's kind of the fucked up thing about complaining, right? Is that on one hand there is value in complaining, right? It is worth saying that there is absolutely value in complaining. The value in complaining is simply that you express your discontentment. So that's a lot better than repressing your discontentment, because the discontentment is there whether you express it or not, and expressing it is much better than. The problem is that complaining. There are two problems I can see. The first one is that if you don't change anything about what you complain about, whether it is like in a local way, or I'm mostly focused on local changes, right? Personally, if you don't do anything, like you're just complaining to do nothing. You're just complaining to complain. And the second one is that, of course, you're complaining to other people often. And, you're not really adding to their lives or anything. Like it just feels like emotional dumping, right? Rather than constructive or anything constructive or any meaningful change. But so yeah, like the most fucked up part of like the culture of complaining, that's really the problem I have. Right? So it's not complaining itself, it's complaining and without any regard to the people you're complaining to, and without any desire to change oneself. It's really fucked up. I would stand away from those people as much as possible, personally. With my family though, it's kind of forced to interact with them, but even then I still have some degree of freedom to how much I can interact with them, how much I have to interact with them. And yeah, my recommendation is that if you can identify people as being people who just play the game of complaining, they don't complain all the time, to just stay away from them as much as possible. To learn to be okay with yourself, or find other people. That's probably even better. But being with yourself is nothing wrong with being with yourself, right? And I think another thing to learn is, it's a very cliche thing that you in the spiritual circles, but I think it's a very, very powerful tool. It really is to appreciate life, like to be grateful in a way that feels alive to you, right? Not in a way where it feels like, not in a way where you feel like you have to tick boxes. So I feel like it's kind of important to develop what I mean by that. So I have tried to develop sort of gratitude or appreciation for life for some time, and it has never clicked up until recently. because I always try to do it in like a mechanical way, like every day show appreciation for something, like it's almost like filling a to-do list, but like that's not how it works. Gratitude is something that needs to feel alive. It needs to feel genuine because it's a genuine appreciation of life. Right? It's not like a mechanical sentence to show appreciation of life. It needs to be alive, and you need to find the form of gratitude that feels alive to you. And like some people, they might feel grateful for like their body in a genuine way, or like they really when they uh, tune into their body, they really appreciate the fact that they're in good health and their body allows them to feel and move and so on. This is great for them if it feels alive for them. My form of gratitude isn't as spiritual or like focus on like my own body or whatever. My form of gratitude is just looking on the internet and looking at cool shit that people do. Like to me, that makes me feel really alive. Like just looking at the cool shit and like creations on art or like ideas that people come up with and seeing like, wow, that's really cool. Like not necessarily creation, but like forms of creation that I like. For example, I like music or visuals. I draw, and I'm just amazed at like the art that is made regularly. Like the internet produces so much art every day, and it's so fucking amazing to just see what people do. But things I also like are like nature and natural sceneries, like which are super completely breathtaking. Right? Like what nature can produce in terms of sceneries is it's so crazy. Like it's so great. And the fact that I don't even necessarily need to go to the internet to find out. Right? Like sometimes you just look outside and you look at the clouds, and it's like it just reminds you of how beautiful this world can be when you stop focusing on everything that goes wrong and you just appreciate that there are things that exist that are just great, right? So that's my form of appreciation of life. I just go for like cool shit and beautiful things. That's the things that tend to trigger my appreciation. So yeah, if that's my recommendation. Is just to try to find your form of gratitude. Like try to find the things that really make you feel like life is just great. Like this is beautiful. This is amazing. I want more of this in my life and all that. So this would be my recommendation. And spending less time with the chronic complainers, because here is it's not a very fun lesson to learn, but it's just a lesson that I always go back to because it feels the more and more I accumulate experience, the more true it feels. Which is the very simple lesson that people don't really change actually in life. Like there are people who work on themselves, and those people certainly change. I would consider myself such a person. Like I don't know if I change really much from year to year, but I certainly make an effort to have a proper relationship with myself. This is a huge part of making these vlogs, right? It's to have a relationship with myself and express my thoughts out loud. And yeah, I would say I've changed a fair amount since I was like 18. Like I said, there's a much bigger difference between the me who was 18 and my current self, who is 22, 23. Than between like my 5-year-old self and my 18-year-old self. Like I'm not joking. Like I think I was very it didn't feel like I was really conscious human being making conscious decisions when I was 18. And to be fair, there were good reasons why that was the case. Like I was just very traumatized, and like a lot of a lot of being made fun of at school and not being supported emotionally by my parents made it so that I was just dissociated all the time, so I wasn't really conscious. But nowadays I'm much more involved in like the conscious change of my life, in whatever ways I can, whatever ways I have control over. But yeah, in my experience, people don't change. People don't change unless something really big happens in their life and they start, taking life serious and all that. But it feels to me like, as dark as it is to say in the modern world, it feels to me like most people never reach that state until they are confronted directly with their own death. Like, even people witnessing the death of like their parents or people close to them, even that doesn't seem to trigger it anymore. It seems like in the world of modernity with endless distraction entertainment, it seems that people just it feels like people just have the the environment that provides them with such entertainment that they could distract themselves basically until the rest of their life, and that they never reflect their change. So they just complain and complain, and they do that for the rest of their lives. This is how I feel like when it comes to some people, like they will just keep complaining for the rest of their lives. And I don't know if anyone listening to this might relate, but I have this sense. It's a really weird sense. I don't know if it's like just a pessimistic intuition, but I'm going to describe this. It's this intuition that when you're in a certain situation that you find yourself, several times or interacting with some people, it's this intuition that this situation will never change, that you should just not expect it to change, right? So like, I remember, so like with people, for example, it will be the intuition that these people will not change in like the next 10 years or even 20 years, right? Like it's that intuition that, the person in front of you will not change. And I've had that intuition with many people, and maybe it's just because I always default to the assumption that people don't change, which is true most of the time, right? So maybe it's not that I have a good intuition with that regards. Maybe it's just that the sad truth is that most people don't change. And I've had an intuition with like giving. I was not really a teacher, but I was like an assistant in university for giving class, and so I was like like the teacher assistant. And so like there was like one thing where I had to like explain exercises and answer people's questions. It was sort of like a mini class, right? And I wasn't assisted by my teacher actually. Like it was just like like theory and practice, and I was giving the practice part with other similar with like other students who were doing something similar to me. But I was still alone in the room, right? So I was basically teaching in some way. And I absolutely hated it. I hated it so much, the situation of teaching, because you could just tell that people didn't care. They didn't understand the subject matter from the questions that they asked, and they also didn't care because the university system is. There's so much to say about the university system. I should make an entire blog post about it. The university system doesn't give an incentive for people to understand or to care. It's just ends up becoming like a game of memorization, so that you can like pass the test. In my experience, rather than like an opportunity to learn something new and expand your horizon, whatever. Like it just becomes about knowledge rather than understanding something. So it's very sad, and I really hated that experience of I only gave like 4 hours, I think, of class, so to speak, and I hated it, and I could tell that it wouldn't change because the problem came from school or the university in this case. It came from university structure and incentive structure, and the fact that it's embedded in a certain society that sees education as a requirement rather than something that you go on your own and to explore and to learn something about. So it becomes like a requirement, and because it's a requirement, it's like a product, right? It's people have to pass. It's not, you can't be like you can't like discriminate people based on that they don't understand enough. Like obviously there's a certain threshold that they need to pass, but like that threshold is so low that it's not a threshold for understanding. It's just a threshold for passing the test, which is very, very different. So all that to say that I have this intuition sometimes. I don't know if it's a real intuition or if it's just me backwards rationalizing it. Maybe it's just me looking in the past and making myself appear more intelligent or like more perceptive than what I am. Like this intuition that some things really never change, and like especially true with people. So when it comes to the people who complain all the time, I wouldn't really bother, right? So yeah, but I think I've made myself clear that expressing your problems, it's important, right? It's complaining. Like there is like what would call like emotional dumping type of complaining, and then there would be like complaining to make a change, right? So those would be like the first one would be, yeah, just dumping your emotions basically and not caring and not wanting to change. The second one will be constructive complaining. So there's definitely such a thing as constructive complaining, but the culture of complaining that I'm talking about is not, it's not that form of complaining, but they're just interested in feeling better in the short term. They're not interested in addressing the problems at the root. I'm gonna be frank, and I have no idea why people do that. I have no idea why people do that. I mean, my explanation, my current explanation is that it's just painful to change, so people don't want to change. But at the same time, as painful as it is to change, right? Like, isn't it way more painful to just always have the same problems? Like, I don't know. That's just how I feel. Like, I mean, yeah, changing is very painful. It's very difficult, but like, it's at the same time, it's worthwhile, right? Like, it's it's worthwhile to change. Which I can't say the same thing about the emotional dumping, complaining. Like, it's that never solves anything. The pain will always come back. So I don't know. It's to me, it's an absolute mystery as to why people engage in the culture of complaining. The culture of complaining is especially apparent on the internet, I feel like, because I'm not sure why it is so much. Oh, like people really like bitching about anything and whatever they see on the internet. They don't really. Yeah, I've actually never thought about why it seems so common to them, because I guess there's like less filter on the internet than in reality, so people can be like more open. And because people don't really seem to be very fulfilled or satisfied in their lives nowadays. It seems that the internet is a great place to like vent and do the emotional dumping. Um, but yeah, there are definitely communities on the internet which are very much built around this culture of complaining. Well, it seems that people use complaining as a way to bond with others, to make relationships, but as you might imagine, this is a very toxic form of relationship. That it's bonding over negativity rather than bonding over something constructive and like positive. So I would encourage people to look out for those and to, as in, look out and not interact with them. Right? So become aware of those cultures on the internet based on complaining. Sometimes the form of complaining is very it takes like a subtle form. Sometimes it's not subtle, but sometimes it's subtle, such as like taking the form of quote unquote memes, or quote unquote memes about how much life sucks and all that. But you can tell that those people, they don't really want to change. They just want to like um, get attention from the fact that they have problems and be upvoted for their meme and their quote unquote humor. But really, what they're doing is not actually changing their life. So like, it's hard for me to be explicit without giving actual names. The things that don't really hang out around those spots as much, but like typically like gamer circles, they have this undertone in my experience of the culture of complaining, where they just talk about, oh haha, I'm such a virgin, bro, like haha, life sucks so much, I'm such a degenerate and I spend all my time playing games, haha. Like that's supposed to be like a meme somehow, but I maybe it's just me projecting, but I can tell it's not. There is some truth to what they're saying. Maybe it's just me projecting, but I feel like there is some truth, which is why the joke is funny in the first place. Like I feel like jokes are only funny because there is some truth to them. But okay, maybe I'm just overanalyzing. But I don't think so. I don't think I'm overanalyzing. I think there's some truth to what I'm saying. Yeah. So I don't think I have much more to say about complaining. Honestly, yeah. I just tend to remove it as much as possible. It doesn't lead to anything constructive. Expressing is very important. Uh, I highly encourage people to express themselves, even if it's just through making vlogs for themselves or journaling for themselves. It is good to express. It's very good to express. Much better than repression. Right? I haven't really touched much about that, but repression is really, really bad. Even just talking, it makes a huge difference to your life. So expressing is huge, but complaining and emotional dumping about changing your life, not so much. You can do without that. But yeah, life is harder. Like life is hard. I'm not gonna say otherwise, but it doesn't it doesn't make like it doesn't really make a good it doesn't really make a good change of your life to just spend all the time complaining about how life is hard without making any change. Like it's I feel like it's so isn't it incredibly simple? Like you want your life to improve, right? So like why don't you just I don't know. It's hard for me because I'm not I'm no longer in that mentality of like victim mentality of just looking at the world and seeing myself as a victim. But I was definitely a victim for much of my life, and I still carry a lot of that victim energy in me, honestly. Yeah, I definitely get triggered sometimes into like this place of victim energy, right? And I think when you're in that victim energy, it is really important to express, right? To really express, but to also recognize that you know expressing is important, but it's also important to take steps. And I think okay, that's a very important idea. I wanted to end up it. That is a very important idea. I think sometimes um, people are afraid to express something uh, or to admit something to themselves because they believe that they immediately need to make a change, or like they believe that they will really have to change, and therefore they never admit something to themselves. Right? Like something like oh, I don't want to admit to myself that I hate my job because if I admit that, then I will have to change my job. I completely disagree, actually. I think admitting is just powerful regardless of whether or not you make a change. It is obviously best if you make a change, but I think it's actually incredibly powerful to just admit it because at least now you're honest with yourself, right? Like you're and you would be surprised at how much of a difference that makes to be honest with yourself, even if your situation doesn't change. Like because there are ways to make peace with the fact that you don't like your job, right? But making peace with the fact that you're not honest with yourself, that doesn't really seem possible to me, because like because what would you use to make peace with that? You would be using yourself, but then you would also not be honest with yourself. It feels really weird. So yeah, uh, all that to say that it's really important to like have some kind of connection with yourself, and that was definitely the biggest thing that I lacked in my life when I was younger, is that I had no relationship with myself. And I think it's true for most people, is that it seems like the first thing that society does is to destroy people's relationships with themselves. Like they just start externalizing everything in their life. Like they don't believe that they can live their own true authentic life, and they don't believe that they can listen to themselves or that they can trust themselves. And people don't seem to get the impression that like they can get the answers to their personal questions from themselves. Like they turn to other people for the answers, and it's very very toxic and very destructive. mm, yeah. It's definitely a more nuanced problem than I expected going into it. Like the whole thing about complaining, but at the same time I think the level at which the culture of complaining is, it's not subtle at all. Like it's just very clearly people who are just complaining and don't not want to change, right? But like when it comes to people who actually want to change, like it becomes more difficult because actual change is difficult, right? So you know I think I think the best thing you can do is to at least be honest with yourself and to actually like, genuinely express something, right, to yourself or to people who actually care about, and not just dump your emotions. Yeah. So I feel like I'm starting to repeat myself, so I think I'm just gonna stop. Hope this video was helpful, and thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next vlog. Goodbye.